It was a quiet morning in the large mansion, the kind of morning where nothing unusual was expected to happen. The sun had just risen, spilling a soft gold light through the tall windows, touching the furniture, the floors, and the grand piano that stood like a centerpiece in the wide hall. The house was silent, almost too silent for such a big place, and the stillness made every small sound feel louder than usual. The housekeeper arrived early that day, just like she always did. She moved quietly, carrying her cleaning supplies as she walked through the long hallway. She had worked in the mansion for months, and she had grown used to the silence, the routines, and the feeling of being invisible in such a large space. She never complained, though. She did her job with patience and care, and she never tried to draw attention to herself. She had a soft, humble way about her. Her footsteps were light, as if she didn't want to disturb the air around her. She knew the mansion better than most people who visited it. She knew which doors creaked, which windows needed a little force to open, and which tables were the favorite spots for dust to settle. She cleaned every corner with thought, never rushing through her tasks, even when nobody was watching. That morning, the mansion's owner, a well-known millionaire, was supposed to be away for the week. He was often busy with meetings, traveling from one city to another, rarely staying home long enough to notice the small details around him. To him, the house was more like a resting place between business trips than an actual home. The housekeeper had never spoken to him beyond a few polite greetings. He hardly looked her way, but she didn't mind. She understood that people like him lived in a different world. She walked into the main hall with her cloth and cleaning spray. The grand piano stood there, polished and shining as always. It was a beautiful instrument made of dark wood, with curved edges and clean keys that reflected the sunlight. She always admired it quietly from a distance. The piano reminded her of something she had once dreamed of, something she had tucked deep inside her heart. She placed her cleaning cloth on the table nearby and looked at the piano again. She hesitated for a moment. She checked the hallway to make sure no one was around. Then, very slowly, she stepped closer to it. Her fingers hovered over the keys, but didn't touch them yet. She told herself she shouldn't play it. It wasn't her place. She was just supposed to clean it, not use it. But the hall was silent, and silence sometimes gives courage. She reached out gently and pressed one key. A single soft note echoed in the room, pure and warm. She closed her eyes for a moment as the sound faded. It felt familiar, comforting, like a voice she hadn't heard in years. She pressed another key, then another, and without realizing it, she shifted onto the piano bench and let her fingers glide across the keys. She began to play not loudly, not boldly, but softly, as if the music was meant only for the empty hall. The notes formed a simple melody, smooth and gentle, filled with emotion she had kept hidden for a long time. It wasn't a performance. It was more like a quiet conversation with herself. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing slowed. The music wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and for a moment she forgot where she was. She forgot that she was just the housekeeper of a millionaire's mansion. She forgot the long days, the tired hands, and the dreams she had let go of. She was simply a person who loved music, a person who once knew how to express herself through melodies. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that the millionaire had returned home unexpectedly. He had arrived early after a change in his plans. His car pulled into the driveway quietly, and he walked through the side entrance with his briefcase in hand. He didn't expect anyone to be in the main hall. He just wanted a moment to rest, maybe get a coffee before heading upstairs. But as he stepped inside, he froze. He heard music, not just random notes, but a melody full of emotion and depth. It wasn't loud, but it carried through the hall with such clarity that it made him pause. For a moment, he thought someone must have hired another pianist to rehearse for an event. But as he walked closer, trying to stay quiet, he saw a sight he never expected. There, seated at his grand piano, was the housekeeper. He stopped halfway through the hall, watching her, his eyebrows lifted in surprise. She didn't see him. She was completely lost in the music. Her posture, her hands, the way she leaned slightly into the melody, it was something he had seen only in trained musicians. He didn't move. He didn't want to interrupt. Something about the moment felt almost sacred, like he was witnessing something rare and fragile. He didn't know much about music, but he knew what emotion sounded like. And the emotion in her playing hit him in a way he didn't expect. He felt something shift inside him, something human, something soft. Every note she played told a story of longing, of struggle, of hope. It was gentle but powerful, simple but full of heart. He could tell she wasn't playing to impress anyone. She was playing because the music lived inside her. When she finally reached the last note, she let her hands rest on the keys for a moment. Then she slowly lifted them and exhaled, almost as if waking from a dream. That was when she saw him. She gasped and immediately stood up from the bench, stepping back as if she had done something terribly wrong. Her face went pale, and her hands shook slightly. She lowered her eyes, avoiding his gaze. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, her voice almost trembling. "I shouldn't have touched it. I was just cleaning, and I didn't mean to overstep." The millionaire didn't speak right away. He was still processing what he had heard, what he had seen. He wasn't angry. He was astonished. He had lived in that house for years, surrounded by expensive things, and nothing, not even the piano, had ever felt so alive until that moment. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm. "Where did you learn to play like that?" She hesitated, unsure if she should answer. She looked at the floor, twisting her fingers nervously. "I learned when I was younger," she said quietly. "I used to play in school. I loved it, but I couldn't continue. Life changed, and I had to work. I haven't played in a long time." He watched her carefully. She wasn't bragging. She wasn't making excuses. She was simply telling the truth in the simplest way. "You played beautifully," he said. "Really beautifully." She blinked, surprised. She didn't expect praise. She didn't expect him to speak kindly at all. She whispered a small thank you and tried to gather her cleaning cloth, ready to leave before she embarrassed herself further. But the millionaire was still thinking. He had seen many talented people in his life, singers, performers, entertainers at events he attended, but none of them had played with such sincerity. He realized that this woman, someone he had barely noticed before, carried a gift that had never been given a chance. He looked at the piano, then at her. "Would you play something else?" he asked. She stared at him in shock. She wasn't sure if she heard him correctly. The idea of playing again with him watching felt almost impossible. She shook her head lightly. "I don't think I should," she whispered. "This is your piano. I'm only here to work." But he smiled gently, not the stiff smile he used in business meetings, but a real one. "Yes, and right now, I'm asking you to play." His tone wasn't demanding. It was sincere. She hesitated again, her heart racing. She didn't know why he cared, why he wanted to hear her play. But something in his voice made her believe it was okay. She slowly sat down again. Her fingers trembled as she touched the keys. She took a slow breath, closed her eyes, and let the music guide her once more. And the millionaire stood there, silently, letting the unexpected magic fill the room again, completely unaware that this moment would change both of their lives forever. The hall was quiet again, but the air felt different now. After she finished the second piece, the housekeeper slowly lifted her hands from the keys. She sat still for a moment, breathing softly, trying to steady her thoughts. She couldn't believe she had played in front of him, of all people. Not because he scared her, but because she never expected someone like him to listen. The millionaire stood a few steps away, not moving, as if he didn't want to break the moment too soon. He had heard countless performances at events, dinners, and charity functions. Some of the best musicians had performed in front of him. Yet something about her playing stayed in his mind. It wasn't just the melody, it was the honesty behind each note. "Do you always play like that?" he asked finally, his voice low, almost careful. She looked down at her hands. "I don't know," she said softly. "I just play what I feel." He nodded slowly, taking in her words. There was no sign of pride in her tone, no attempt to impress him. She simply said it as a truth she carried quietly in her heart. She stood up gently, as if afraid she had already taken too much of his time. "I should get back to work," she said. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you." "Disturbed me?" he repeated, almost surprised. "You didn't disturb me at all." She remained quiet, unsure how to respond. He walked closer, not too close, just enough to show he wasn't upset. He looked at the piano, then back at her. "How long has it been since you played like this?" he asked. She hesitated. Her eyes softened with a mix of memories and pain. "Years," she answered. "Life changed. I had to work, and music didn't fit anywhere anymore." There was something about the way she said it simple, but full of weight. He could tell she didn't want to appear emotional or dramatic. She wasn't trying to tell a sad story. She was just telling the truth. He took a small breath and said, "You know, not everyone plays with meaning. Many people play, but only a few make others feel something. You made the whole room feel alive." She blinked in surprise. Compliments weren't something she was used to, especially not from someone like him. She nodded politely, almost uncomfortable with the praise. "I appreciate your kindness," she said, "but please don't think too highly of it. I'm just someone who used to play a little." He shook his head. "No," he said softly. "There's nothing little about what I just heard." She didn't know what to say, so she simply remained quiet. After a moment, he asked gently, "Did you ever want to study music properly?" She swallowed. Her voice came out quieter than before. "Yes," she whispered. "I once dreamed of it, but life had other plans." He felt something shift inside him again. He wasn't a man who often thought about other people's dreams. His life was filled with business calls, deadlines, financial decisions, investments, events. He was used to people wanting things from him, not someone wanting something that had nothing to do with his wealth. But right now, standing in front of this quiet woman who had played a melody that touched him deeply, he found himself thinking about possibilities he had never considered before. She picked up her cloth again, clearly wanting to return to her work before she felt too exposed. "I'll finish cleaning this area," she said gently. He nodded, though he didn't want the conversation to end so quickly. He lingered for a moment, watching her as she wiped the piano carefully. She touched it with respect, almost affection, as if she was grateful to the instrument for giving her those few minutes of escape. Finally, he spoke again. "You don't have to worry. You didn't do anything wrong. You can play whenever you want." Her hands paused. She looked at him with uncertainty. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." Her eyes lowered again. "Thank you," she whispered, "but I don't want to take advantage. I only played because I thought I was alone." He understood her hesitation. She was someone who valued boundaries, someone who didn't want to cross lines or make others uncomfortable. "You're not taking advantage," he said. "You're using something that was made to be played. And honestly," he paused, choosing his words, "it sounded better today than it ever has." Her cheeks warmed with a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time, if ever. She didn't reply, but her eyes softened in a way that let him know the words meant something. He finally stepped back. "I'll let you continue," he said, "but thank you for the music." She gave a small nod, then returned to her work. The hall felt quiet again, but the quiet wasn't empty this time. It carried something different, something warm. He walked toward his office, but his thoughts stayed with her. The melody she played kept echoing in his mind. He couldn't shake it off. It followed him like a gentle reminder of something important, something he didn't fully understand yet. As he sat down at his desk, he couldn't focus on his documents. He found himself pausing over and over again, replaying the moment in his mind. Her music had unlocked something he hadn't known he needed. Meanwhile, in the main hall, she continued cleaning. But the cleaning felt different now. Her hands moved the same way, but her heart felt lighter, almost confused. She didn't understand why he had been so kind. She had never expected kindness from someone in his position. She remembered the way he had looked at her playing, not with annoyance, not with irritation, but with genuine interest. It made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. Still, she tried to remind herself not to expect anything. People were unpredictable. Moments like this happened once in a lifetime and usually didn't lead anywhere. She whispered to herself, "Don't think too much. Just do your work." But even as she tried to focus, her mind kept drifting back to the piano. It was the first time in years she had played more than a few scattered notes. And somehow, the music had flowed out of her, as if it had been waiting inside all along. Later in the day, as she was about to leave the hall, she glanced back at the piano. Soft sunlight touched its surface again. She felt something stir inside her, a feeling she had buried long ago. Hope not, but she quickly pushed it down. Dreams had a way of breaking people when they expected too much. She had learned that long ago. The millionaire, however, did not let the moment pass. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to understand her story. Not out of curiosity, not out of pity, but out of a growing sense of fascination. How could someone with so much talent end up working quietly in the background, unseen and unheard? He stood up from his desk and walked back to the hall. She was no longer there, but the piano remained, holding the echo of her melodies. He placed his hand on it, feeling the cool surface. He whispered to himself, "There's something special about her." He didn't know what he wanted to do yet, but one thing was certain the moment he heard. Her play had changed something inside him, and he wasn't going to ignore that feeling. That night, when she went home, she carried the memory of the day with her. She kept thinking about his words, wondering why they felt so genuine. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a small spark of warmth in her heart. She didn't know it yet, but her life had already started to change. The next morning arrived, with a gentle breeze moving through the tall trees outside the mansion. Birds sat along the branches, chirping as if the day held something new, something quietly waiting to unfold. Inside the mansion, everything looked the same: polished floors, tall windows, soft carpets, but the feeling was different. The housekeeper didn't know why, but as she unlocked the side door and stepped in, she felt a strange mix of nervousness and warmth in her chest. She didn't usually think about the previous day. Her job required focus, routine, and steady work. But today was different. She couldn't stop replaying the moments from yesterday. Her fingers on the keys, the music flowing like water, and then him, standing there, quietly listening, without anger or judgment. She still couldn't understand why he had been so kind. Millionaires didn't usually say things like, "You played beautifully." They didn't listen the way he did. They didn't speak softly with sincerity. But he had. Even though she wanted to brush the memory away to avoid overthinking, she couldn't. Every time she blinked, she remembered the look in his eyes and pressed. Curious, almost moved, she stepped into the main hall. The piano sat silently, untouched since yesterday. The sunlight hit it from the side, making its surface shine. She paused, feeling something tug inside her as she looked at it. She placed her cleaning cloth on the table and stood there for a moment, uncertain whether she should go near the piano again. She didn't want to overstep. She didn't want to seem unprofessional or give the wrong impression. But she also couldn't deny the gentle pull in her heart. Before she could decide, she heard footsteps. The millionaire entered the hall with a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked freshly awake, as if he hadn't been able to sleep much. He stopped when he saw her. "Good morning," he said. She lowered her eyes respectfully. "Good morning, sir." There was a small pause. He looked at the piano, then at her again. "I've been thinking about something," he said. She felt her heart skip. She didn't know if it was good or bad. He stepped a little nearer, not in a rushed way, but gently. "Yesterday, you're playing. I can't get it out of my mind." She blinked in surprise, not expecting him to bring it up again. He continued, "I have a small gathering coming up soon. A few people friends, business associates, some guests. Nothing too big. But I usually have some kind of music for the evening." She nodded politely, unsure what he was trying to say. "I was thinking." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Would you consider playing something that night?" Her breath caught. "Me?" she whispered. "Yes," he said, his tone steady. "You." She shook her head lightly, almost immediately. "I can't. I'm not a performer. I'm just a person who plays beautifully," he finished. She stepped back slightly, overwhelmed. "They will judge me," she said softly. "People like them. They don't see someone like me as anything more than staff." He didn't deny it. He knew she wasn't wrong. But he also knew something she didn't. "They'll hear your music before they see anything else," he said gently. "And your music is strong enough to speak for you." She looked at him, her eyes uncertain. "I haven't played in years. Yesterday was the first time I played more than a few minutes. I don't think I'm ready for something like that." He nodded slowly, understanding her fear. "You don't have to decide now," he said. "Think about it. That's all I'm asking." She didn't answer. She didn't know how. Her heart was beating fast, her thoughts spinning. She wanted to refuse politely, to avoid embarrassment, to stay in the safe place where no one expected anything from her. But at the same time, a small part of her whispered, "What if?" He didn't push her. He simply gave a small nod and walked toward his office, giving her spaced out. She watched him leave, still unsure what just happened. Then she slowly turned back to the piano. Her fingers tingled with memory, like they remembered the music even if her mind doubted. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Why me?" But she knew why. Deep down, she knew she had something inside her, something she had ignored for years. Something that came alive the moment she touched the keys. She picked up her cloth and returned to cleaning, but her thoughts wandered endlessly. She imagined what the night would look like. A hall full of people, eyes watching her. The pressure, the fear, the possibility of making mistakes. But then she imagined something else. The sound of the piano beneath her fingers. The feeling of letting the music flow freely. The way it made her feel whole. Hours passed. She finished all the morning cleaning, but her mind remained heavy with thoughts. When the afternoon came, she walked past the piano again. This time she stopped. She sat on the bench, very slowly, as if her body moved before her mind allowed it. She placed her hands on the keys, but didn't press anything yet. She whispered, "Don't be foolish. Don't hope too much." But her fingers moved anyway. A soft melody slipped out, one she didn't plan, one that felt like her heart speaking without words. It wasn't perfect. Her hands trembled. She missed a note. But she didn't stop. She kept playing, letting the music guide her, She didn't notice that the millionaire had returned to the hall and stood quietly near the door. He didn't interrupt. He listened. He noticed how her shoulders relaxed the longer she played, how her breathing steadied, how her fingers found confidence they had lost long ago. When she finished, he finally spoke. "You're thinking about it." She nearly jumped, not knowing he had come back. "I didn't see you." "That's all right," he said gently, "but I can tell. You're considering it." She looked down at her hands. "I don't want to disappoint anyone." "You won't," he said calmly. She shook her head. "You don't know that." "Yes," he said, "I do." There was something reassuring in the way he said it, simple, steady, without pressure. He came closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "If you agree," he said, "I'll arrange time for you to practice. No one will disturb you. You don't have to perform anything grand. Just something that comes from you." She looked at him with searching eyes. "Why are you doing this?" His expression softened. "Because what you played yesterday moved me more than anything I've heard in a long time. And I think other people should hear it too." She didn't speak for a long moment. Her heart felt fragile, as if one wrong step could break it. She remembered all the struggles she had gone through, lost dreams, long days of work, times she had forced herself to forget what she loved. But right now, someone believed in her. Someone who had no reason to lie. Finally, she whispered, "I'll try." He smiled, not a wide smile, but a warm, genuine one that reached his eyes. "That's all I wanted." The words felt like a small light being lit inside her. He added, "We'll start whenever you're ready. And remember, it's just music. There's no pressure." She nodded, though her heart still pounded. She didn't know if she could truly do it, but she had agreed. And something inside her felt strangely relieved. Over the next days, the mansion changed in small, meaningful ways. He arranged for the piano to be tuned again, making it sound fresh and rich. He cleared the hall during certain hours so she could practice without fear of being watched by the staff. He even set a small music stand for her, placing simple sheet music there, not challenging pieces, but gentle ones that matched her style. She practiced quietly, always nervous at first, but growing more comfortable as the moments passed. He often listened from a distance, not to judge her, but because the music made the house feel like a home for the first time. She didn't know he listened, and he didn't want to make her more nervous. One afternoon, after playing a longer piece, she stood, wiped her hands on her apron, and whispered to herself, "I can do this." Maybe. But the truth was already clear. She wasn't just practicing. She was waking up a part of herself she had forgotten. Dot and the Millionaire. He was noticing details about her he had never seen before: the focus in her eyes, the gentleness in her posture, the quiet strength she carried. He found himself wondering how someone so talented could be overlooked by the world. And he made a silent promise in his heart. He would make sure her gift was heard. He didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know what would happen either. But something had begun, something small, delicate, and full of possibility. And neither of them could turn back now. It was just after sunrise when the large house slowly came to life. The workers moved quietly through the hallways, each one focused on their own tasks. But inside the housekeeper's mind, the morning felt different. She woke up with a strange feeling in her chest, like something had shifted the night before. She kept replaying the moment the millionaire had heard her play the piano. That moment kept returning to her mind again and again, as if it carried a meaning she could not fully understand yet. She had planned to avoid thinking too much about it, but the memory was too alive. His expression, the stillness in the room, the shock on his face, everything stayed with her. She was not used to people listening to her with such seriousness. She was used to being in the background, quietly completing her duties, never drawing attention to herself. The millionaire, on the other hand, woke up earlier than usual. He sat at the edge of his bed for a long time, thinking about what he had heard the previous night. He had listened to world-famous musicians, had attended well-known concerts, and had met many talented people in his life. But the music he heard from his housekeeper somehow felt different. It wasn't perfect, not in the technical sense, but it carried something honest, something that touched a deeper place inside him. He asked himself again and again how she had learned to play like that, and more importantly, why she hid it. The house was quiet when she walked into the main living area with her cleaning supplies. She liked starting early because it allowed her to finish her hardest work before everyone else woke up. She placed her tools on the floor and began wiping the shelves. She moved carefully, not wanting to disturb anything, but soon she felt a presence behind her. She turned around slowly, and there he was, the millionaire, watching her with a calm expression. She froze for a moment, unsure if she had done something wrong. "You start early," he said, his voice gentle. "Yes, sir," she replied, keeping her eyes lowered. "I like finishing the main rooms before breakfast." He nodded, but his eyes carried the curiosity he had woken up with. "Did you sleep well?" She hesitated. "Yes, sir." "Thank you." He walked a little closer, but kept a respectful distance. "I wanted to speak with you about last night." Her hands tightened around the cloth she was holding. She had hoped the moment had passed quietly, that maybe he had already forgotten about it. "I'm sorry," she whispered quickly. "I didn't mean to disturb anything. It was just a moment. It won't happen again." He blinked, confused. "Disturb anything?" "You didn't disturb anyone." She didn't speak. She simply stood there, trying to protect herself from whatever judgment was coming. "I wanted to say, what you played last night was beautiful," he said, her breath caught. She never expected those words. "Thank you," she replied softly. He looked at her carefully. "Where did you learn to play?" She shook her head. "It's nothing important, sir." He didn't push. He could tell she was protecting a story she didn't want to open just yet, but something about her silence made him even more curious. He took a moment, then asked, "Would you walk with me for a minute?" Her eyes widened. "Sir?" "Just to the music room," he clarified gently. She hesitated. She didn't know if walking beside him was appropriate, but he spoke with such calmness that she didn't feel pressured. Slowly, she nodded. They walked through the hallway in silence. Her steps were small and careful, while his were steady and confident. She felt the difference between their worlds with every step. When they reached the music room, he opened the door and waited for her to enter first. She stepped inside slowly, like she wasn't sure she belonged there, even though she had cleaned the room hundreds of times. The grand piano stood in the center, polished to perfection. Morning light fell across its surface, making it shine. He walked to the side and leaned against a small table, watching her. "I want to ask you something," he said. She waited. "Would you play again?" Her heart began to race. She looked at the piano, then at the floor. "I'm not sure I should," she said quietly. "Why not?" he asked. "I don't want to cross any lines," she replied. "This is your home. I'm here to work, not to entertain." He shook his head gently. "I'm not asking you as a boss. I'm asking as someone who appreciates music." His voice carried a sincerity she could feel. "But only if you're comfortable," he added. She took a long breath. Everything inside her felt tangled fear, doubt, longing, and the quiet love she carried for the piano. She finally nodded. He smiled softly and stepped back to give her space. She sat down slowly at the bench. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She didn't want to repeat the same melody from last night. She wanted something new, something honest. When she finally touched the keys, the room filled with a gentle warmth. Her playing was quiet but rich, like she was telling a story through sound instead of words. She didn't know how long she played. She only knew that when she stopped, the silence felt almost too heavy to break. When she looked up, the millionaire was standing closer than before. His expression soft but full of thought. "That's not just talent," he said quietly. "That's something deeper." She looked down again, unsure how to respond. He continued, "You've been hiding this for a long time." She didn't deny it. He walked slowly to the other side of the piano. "Do you trust me?" The question surprised her. "Sir?" "I want to help you," he said simply. "But only if you trust me enough to let me." Her chest tightened. Trust was not something she gave easily. Life had taught her to be careful, very careful. She studied his face. There was no pressure in his voice, no hidden meaning. Just honest curiosity and a gentle desire to understand Dot after a long silence. She said, "I'm not ready to share everything." He nodded respectfully. "That's all right, but," she added softly, "I don't mind sharing a little." The millionaire's face warmed with a quiet smile. She placed her hands on her lap and finally said the words she had kept inside for years. "I used to have a dream," she whispered. "A big one. But life doesn't always let you chase the things you love." He listened without interrupting, not even once. "I stopped playing a long time ago," she continued. "I only play when no one is around. It feels safer that way." Her voice was calm, but her eyes held old memories. The millionaire spoke gently. "Dreams don't disappear. Sometimes they go quiet, but they're still there." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that. "Dot," he took a slow breath and said something she never expected. "Would you let me help you bring that dream back?" Her heart trembled. She looked at him with confusion, fear, and a small spark of hope she had tried to bury for years. She didn't answer yet. She couldn't. But the look in her eyes said enough for now. The seed had been planted, and nothing would be the same again. The house felt different that morning, as if a quiet change was moving through it. The air carried a sense of something new, something that neither the housekeeper nor the millionaire fully understood yet. But both of them felt it, even if they did not speak about it. The millionaire stood by one of the tall windows, looking out at the wide garden. He held a cup of tea in his hand, but he wasn't drinking it. He was thinking, deeply. His thoughts kept returning to the housekeeper's music, to the way she played with such truth and emotion. He had spent the whole night thinking about the conversation they had in the music room. Her words still echoed in his mind. "I used to have a dream." He wondered what had happened to that dream. What had forced her to walk away from it? What pain or hardship had led her to hide such talent inside small moments when no one was watching? He felt something like responsibility forming inside him. Though he couldn't explain it yet, Dot at the same time, the housekeeper was in the laundry room, folding clean towels with slow, careful hands. Her thoughts kept drifting toward the music room. She replayed his question again and again in her mind. "Would you let me help you bring that dream back?" She hadn't answered him because the idea felt too big, too unreal. She had spent years trying to survive day by day, doing work that didn't leave much room for dreaming. And now someone like him, a man from a completely different world, was offering something she didn't even dare imagine anymore. She didn't know what to think or what to believe. She folded the last towel, placed it neatly in the basket, and took a long breath before stepping out into the hallway. She hoped work would clear her mind, but her thoughts followed her everywhere. Dot, as she walked through the hall, she didn't expect him to appear from the other side. They almost bumped into each other. She quickly stepped back, lowering her gaze. "Good morning," he said warmly. "Good morning, sir," she replied. He noticed how she avoided eye contact. Usually she was calm around him, but today she looked a little nervous. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable yesterday," he said gently. Her eyes lifted just slightly. "No, sir." "You didn't? I'm just not used to being asked things like that." He nodded understandingly. "I know, and I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. I just want you to think about it." She nodded slowly. He hesitated, then added, "Can we talk later?" "Only if you're free." "Yes, sir," she said softly. The day passed quietly after that, but both of them kept thinking about the upcoming conversation. She carried a small knot of worry inside her chest, unsure what he wanted to discuss. He carried a sense of purpose, like he needed to understand her more before he could offer any help. Later in the afternoon, he found her in the garden sweeping fallen leaves. The sun was soft, casting a gentle glow over everything. He walked toward her slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. She put the broom aside and nodded. He gestured toward one of the garden benches. She followed him quietly and sat down at the far end of the bench, leaving some space between them. He noticed the distance, but didn't mind. He knew she needed it to feel safe. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of nature filled the silence, the wind moving through the trees, birds calling softly from the branches. Finally, he spoke. "I want to ask you something personal," he said. "But if you don't want to answer, I'll understand." She waited. "What happened to your dream?" he asked softly. Her fingers tightened gently in her lap. That question touched a part of her she rarely opened. She took a deep breath. "When I was younger," she began slowly, "music was everything to me. I didn't have much, but I had a small keyboard someone gave me. It was old and missing pieces, but I learned on it. I used to spend hours practicing, teaching myself, hoping maybe one day I could learn properly." He listened carefully, his full attention on her. "But life changed," she continued. "People in my family got sick. I had to start working early. I didn't have time or money for lessons. And after a while, it felt selfish to hold on to something that couldn't help us survive." She looked down. "So I stopped," she whispered. "I told myself it was just a childish dream." He felt something tighten in his chest. Her words carried a quiet sadness that he wasn't prepared for. "But you didn't forget how to play?" He said. "No," she replied. "I couldn't forget. When something is part of your heart, it doesn't leave. It just gets quieter." That sentence stayed with him. He took a slow breath and said, "You didn't do anything wrong by choosing to help your family." She didn't respond, but he could tell she heard him. "And your dream wasn't childish," he added. "It was real, and you still carry it." A soft breeze moved through the garden. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the calm settle inside her. "Sir," she said quietly, "I don't want to cause trouble in your home. I don't want to become a burden." He turned toward her directly. "Listen to me. You are not a burden. You have been working hard here for a long time. You keep this place running, and your talent, your music has value. It's not something to hide." Her throat tightened, not with fear, but with emotion she had tried to bury. He continued, "All I want is to help you in a way that feels right for you. Not to control anything, not to push you, just to open a door you thought was closed." She took another long breath. He waited patiently, giving her time. Finally, she spoke again, her voice soft. "I'm scared." He nodded gently. "Dreams are scary, especially the ones we think we've lost." Silence settled between them again, but this time it felt different. It felt like something was healing, even if just a little. After a moment, he said, "How about this? You don't have to decide anything big. Just take one small step." She looked at him with wondering eyes. "What kind of step?" "Let me arrange a lesson for you," he said softly. "One lesson, just to see how it feels. If you don't like it, we stop. No pressure. No expectations." Her heart fluttered with fear and hope at the same time. A lesson? She whispered, double quotes, yes, with someone patient. Someone who will understand where you're coming from. She looked away for a moment, thinking deeply. The idea felt unreal. Someone like her receiving a real piano lesson. It sounded like something from another world. What if I'm not good enough? She asked. You already are, he said simply. The words hit her deeply, almost too deeply. Sir? I don't know. I'm not asking you to be ready, he replied. I'm asking you to try. Her eyes grew warm with emotion she tried to hide. The millionaire didn't push further. He gave her space to breathe. After a long silence, she finally said the words he had been hoping for. I can try, she whispered. He smiled softly. That's all I wanted to hear. She looked down, unable to hide the small smile forming on her lips. It was nervous, shy, but real. The sun began to set slowly, covering the garden with a warm glow. The moment felt quiet and important, as if the world had paused just for them. Before she stood up to return to her work, she said softly, Thank you, sir. He shook his head gently. You don't have to thank me. Just let yourself dream again. She walked away slowly, her steps lighter than before. For the first time in many years, she felt something she almost forgot hope. The millionaire watched her leave, knowing that this small step was only the beginning, and he was determined to help her take the next one. The morning of her first lesson arrived quietly, but inside the housekeeper's heart, nothing felt quiet. She woke up earlier than usual, long before the sun touched the windows. She sat on the edge of her small bed, her hands resting in her lap, trying to calm the storm of emotions moving through her. She kept telling herself it was just a lesson, only one lesson. Nothing more. The millionaire had promised there would be no pressure, no expectations. But still, her heart felt heavy with nerves. She hadn't learned from a real teacher in her whole life. Everything she knew had been self-taught, formed in moments where she stole time for herself. She got dressed slowly, tied her hair back, and stood in front of the small mirror on the wall. She barely recognized the expression on her face. It had a mixture of fear, excitement, and something softer, something that looked almost like a dream trying to return Dot when she stepped out of her room. The house was already awake. Workers moved through the halls, each lost in their own duties. She tried blending into the rhythm of the house, as she always did, but today she felt strangely separate, like she was carrying a secret inside her. The millionaire was waiting in the music room. He had arranged everything quietly the day before. A piano teacher, someone gentle, kind, and understanding, was scheduled to arrive soon. He wanted the moment to feel safe for her. He leaned over the piano, lightly brushing the surface with his hand, thinking about the conversation they had in the garden. He had seen something shift inside her that day, something fragile but real, and he didn't want that spark to fade. When she finally entered the room, she stood quietly by the door. He noticed she looked nervous, more nervous than he expected. You came early, he said softly. I didn't want to be late, she replied. He smiled reassuringly. You're not late. You're just on time. She nodded, but didn't move from the doorway. Would you like to sit for a moment before the teacher arrives? He asked. I can stand, she said quietly. He didn't argue. He understood her nerves. Instead, he walked over and stood at a gentle distance. You don't have to be afraid, he said. This is just a beginning. Nothing more. She took a slow breath. I don't want to disappoint anyone. You won't, he said firmly. Music isn't about perfection. It's about truth. And you already have that. Before she could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. The teacher had arrived. A kind-looking woman stepped inside, carrying a small bag with her. She had a warm smile and a calm presence exactly. The type of person the millionaire had hoped. 4. Good morning, she said gently. The housekeeper stepped aside respectfully. You must be the one I'm meeting today, the teacher said with a soft smile. The housekeeper lowered her eyes shyly. Yes, ma'am. Please, the teacher said warmly. There's no need for formality with me. We're just here to enjoy music. Those words eased a little of the tension inside the housekeeper's chest. The millionaire stepped back, allowing the two of them to speak. He didn't want to interfere. He only wanted to be there in case she needed support. The teacher opened her bag and pulled out a notebook. Before we begin, she said softly, I want to ask you something. Not about technique or training. Just something simple. The housekeeper nodded slowly. What made you fall in love with music? The teacher asked. The question caught her by surprise. She had expected instructions, exercises, maybe even criticism. But not this. She took a moment, thinking back to her childhood. I used to listen to old melodies on a small radio, she said softly. It made everything feel lighter, like the world was still kind, even when things were hard. The teacher smiled. That's a beautiful answer. The housekeeper lowered her eyes again, unsure how to take the compliment. Would you like to play something for me? The teacher asked, her tone gentle. The housekeeper froze. She had expected this, but her nerves tightened anyway. If you're not ready, that's all right, the teacher added kindly. But the housekeeper shook her head. I can play. She moved slowly toward the piano bench. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat down. The teacher stood nearby, giving her space. The millionaire stayed near the back of the room, watching quietly, his heart strangely full. When her fingers touched the keys, she took one long, steadying breath. Then she began. The melody that filled the room was soft but full of emotion, familiar, yet deeper than anything she had played before. Maybe it was because today she wasn't hiding. Today she wasn't stealing a moment for herself. Today she was seeing. Her music carried all the years she had been silent, all the dreams she had pushed down, all the feelings she had tucked away just to survive. When she finished, the room fell into a heavy, warm silence. The teacher wiped a small tear from her eye. That, she whispered, was beautiful. The housekeeper looked surprised. It wasn't perfect. No, the teacher said kindly. But perfection doesn't move people. Honesty does. And your music is honest. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The millionaire stepped forward, unable to stay silent. I told you, he said softly. You have something rare. The housekeeper felt her chest tighten with emotion, but she kept her eyes lowered. The teacher rested a hand gently on the piano. I would be honored to teach you, she said. If you'll let me. The housekeeper's eyes lifted slowly, filled with disbelief. Teach me? She whispered. Double quotes. Yes, proper lessons. Real lessons. But only if you want them. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She didn't know how to respond. A part of her wanted to run away, to hide, to tell herself that this wasn't her world. But another part, deeper, quieter, and long buried, wanted to reach out and hold this chance. She looked at the millionaire. His expression was warm, supportive, and full of something she couldn't quite name. Then she looked back at the teacher. I want to learn, she whispered. The teacher smiled gently. Then we'll take this step together. The millionaire felt something subtle inside him, a quiet satisfaction. Not because he had done something grand, but because she had allowed herself to choose her dream. Days turned into weeks, and the lessons continued. Slowly, the housekeeper changed. Her confidence grew. Her posture shifted. Her eyes held more light. She still worked hard in the house, still kept her humble routine, but inside her, something had awakened. And the millionaire noticed everything. One evening, after a long lesson. The teacher asked her to perform a small piece she had been practicing. She played it with grace, emotion, and a quiet power. When she finished, the teacher clapped softly. "You're blooming," she said warmly. The housekeeper looked down. Embarrassed but happy, the millionaire stepped closer. "You've come a long way," he said. She shook her head gently. "I still have a long way to go." "That's the beauty of music," he replied. "There's no finish line, only growth." She looked at him with grateful eyes, eyes that carried trust, now something she had never given easily. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "You did the hard part. You believed in yourself." She smiled quietly. The room grew calm, filled with the soft warmth of a dream coming back to life. And in that peaceful moment, she realized something deep inside her. She was no longer the woman who hid her talent in the shadows. She was no longer the person who played only when no one was listening. She was becoming someone new, someone brave, someone whole. And the millionaire, standing beside her, knew he had witnessed something rare, something more valuable than anything he owned. Not just the rise of talent, but the return of a dream, and he felt honored to be part of her journey. The housekeeper looked at the piano, her eyes soft, hopeful, and full of a future she never thought she could have. For the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving, she was living, and her music, now free, full, and fearless, was only just beginning.